the second. Okay. So if you have the first edition, it's fine. It's just the second edition has more added in. Um, and and yeah, it's really good. Um, and if you don't have it, you'll survive, and we'll go over it, but hopefully you'll have access to it. So give me a second. So about me, just real quick. My name's April Hoffman. I was the reading specialist at the Global Academy in Kansas City Public Schools last year. I've been a teacher for 19 years. 17 of those 19 years I've taught ESL. And for the last 9 years, I've taught exclusively SLIFE and newcomer students. So, so this book study is definitely my jam. It's again, great information. My favorite thing to do in a classroom, or one of the favorite things I like to do in a classroom, is a Kahoot or a PowerPoint to introduce myself and students, and which I've been doing for maybe not 9 years, but about 6 of those. And it's actually one of Carol's strategies that we'll talk more about today, in fact. And then one of my biggest struggles, I do speak Spanish, and sometimes that can actually be a hindrance for me because I sometimes revert to Spanish when students start struggling instead of giving them that time for productive struggle, um, especially when they're newer. So that's one of my biggest struggles as a life teacher or a newcomer educator. So right now, I'd like to know who you are. So in the chat, if you could put your name, and you can kind of just pick what you want to share. Your name, how long you've been teaching, where you teach now, and then if you want to just pick something that you like to do in your classroom, it can be with ESL or not, like a favorite activity or community building exercise, or you can do your biggest struggle with ESL students, just something about you as a teacher so we can get to know you just a little bit more. I love games. Games are the best. Kids love them. Great sense of community, depending on how competitive they get. I've had some classes where it's backfired a little bit, but I love games. Morning meeting. Morning meeting's great. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Uno. Is Uno one? Sorry. Maria Flick. Is Uno one something different or is it just Uno? Because if it's something different, I need to know about it. Just Uno. Okay. Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. 30 years. That's a long time. Yeah. Connected. I must say, I have had plants in my classroom, and those were definitely better years. I'm not sure why, but plants make everything better. Yes. Okay. Well, welcome. Um, again, just going to go through, like, we're going to go through some strategies and different things that Carol has shared with us through her book. Um, I don't know if any of you guys had the chance to go to Carol's professional development that she had through the RPDC in, I think it was February, but it was phenomenal. It was virtual. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet her, but it was phenomenal. She went through this book as well, and it was, I don't know, she's just so insightful. 25 years. Wow. Okay, so we've got a lot of teachers and a lot of people with a lot of experience. So please share, because I definitely don't know how to do it all. I'm just sharing from my experience. So let's go ahead and get started. So I can do this. So here's the book. Again, it is the second edition. Um, and the second edition it has a decent amount of added information, added resources, more than the first book. So if you have it, great. If not, that's fine. Okay. It looks similar to the first book, but it's got more blue. She called it the blue cover rather than, I think, the other one she called the yellow cover. So it just has a lot of blue on it rather than the first edition. But we'll go ahead and talk about the foreword. Again, I usually skip the foreword when it comes to books, especially educational books. They're kind of usually don't, to me, contain a lot of information that I find valuable. But I thought this one was really good. It is written by a gentleman named Tan Nguyen, and he writes about his work and how he met Carol Salva. It it also has a link for a lesson template that works for all students. Um, Obviously, your school is going to have different ones, but I thought it was a pretty good one. He talks about engineering equitable assets. Oh, well, okay, let me stop. He he talks about some of these, but most of it is his blog. He shares his blog, and on his blog it has all of these things, which again he's able to go into a lot more details. Um, so how to make things more collaborative, myths of language acquisition, how to teach content. Again, if you don't want to read it, don't, but you might want to take a look at his blog, which I do have linked on our, not Wordle, on the, oh my goodness, what's it called? Also, I
Wakelet.
don't, Wakelet, thank you. My
It's in
goodness,
the
my
note
brain.
taker.
Yes. So the Wakelet has a link to his blog. Um, I don't know if I have it on there also, but Carol Salva has a blog, also has a Twitter. She's got all sorts of stuff that's just chock full of information, which she actually uses QR codes throughout her book to kind of link through as well. So tons of information if you ever want to go back and look at it, or if you're just interested. Okay. But again, the foreword, um, it's just really insightful coming from another person's point of view, and how he got started and how he ended up working with Carol. So, okay. Skipping to the introduction. Um, so trying to think of, okay. So first of all, Carol starts at the beginning of her book, and I'm gonna do this as well. SLIFE will be the term that I use. It's the term she used. I know some districts use SIFE, but SLIFE, students with limited or interrupted formal education. So that's what I'll be using. If you knew it by a different term, sorry, but this is what she uses in her book. And she goes into detail about why she uses that. But I'm just going to stick with her terminology as well. Okay. So in the introduction, my biggest takeaway was that lack of opportunity does not equate to cognitive delay. And I think if you've worked with ESL students, or even, well, most students, you hopefully realize that. So maybe they haven't had the opportunities that other students have, but it doesn't mean that they can't do it, that they're not cognitively there. It's just they haven't had the same support And that's what her introduction kind of goes through. Um, does anyone else, if you've read the introduction or the foreword, did anyone else have any takeaways, whether it was a quote or connection to your classroom or your school on that? Again, if you do, go ahead and write it in the chat so that we can take a look at it and see, again, other connections. Because sometimes I might not think of something as I'm reading through, but if someone points it out, I might be able to make a better connection. All about sharing on this one. Um, no one has any questions about the first two. I'm going to just jump right into part one. Okay. There's a lot of information in part one. Okay. So working with students who are SLIFE. Again, students with limited or interrupted formal education. Okay. So, well, I just kind of went through that a little bit, but if we talk about a SLIFE student, we want to talk about what they might be able to do um, or how we see them. So right now, you don't have to write it in the chat, but if you just take a moment and think about a SLIFE student. So to you in your classroom or your district or to the people you're helping's classrooms, how do you see a SLIFE student? SLIFE student, yes, has, limited or interrupted formal education. But what else? What else is a SLIFE student? If I were in my classroom, I would right now do a think, write, pair, share. But a couple minutes to think and then write. So again, I'm going to give you a minute-ish to think about it. And if you want to jot it down on a piece of paper or in the chat, that would be great. And while you do that, I'm going to look at Juliana's chat, page 11, third paragraph. Yes, 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 and more yes. Trauma, not always, but yes, a lot of trauma. We see a lot of trauma with our life students. Overwhelmed, definitely. Unable to do grade work, grade level work without scaffolds, definitely. Feels like they don't belong in the community if they don't have the right support, definitely. Okay. Real quick though, I do want to read Juliana's reminder or what she wrote in the chat. It was on page 11 that even at young ages, many SLIFE students come to America with enough pain to fill a lifetime of sadness and despair. Their bodies might be here, but their hearts and prayers remain with those whom they've left behind. They're grateful for this new home, free of persecution, without a tightening noose around their lives, but they ache for their real homes and the people they couldn't bring along. And 100%. Um, I had a student this last year at school I was at that 100% she felt lucky to be here, but her mother was left. It was in her home country, and to say she struggled with that, I mean, who wouldn't? But so it was really it was a hard time, which you got to understand. So yes, to all those things. Okay, so our life students. Okay, so this is how Carol, excuse, this is how Carol defines a life student. So, student with interrupted, minimal, or no formal education from their native country. They're generally newcomers to the United States. They can be migrant, but not necessarily. They can be an asylee or refugee. And they need a broader orientation into our public school system. Okay. If they haven't been to school and we're all of a sudden plopping them into organized classrooms, they're not going to understand the rules if they haven't had that formal education in their home country. So they need that orientation. They need that support in our schools. Okay. This is in her book. I do not remember which page, but it's in part one. But the kind of the definitions, and I think it's kind of easy to understand it, but it's a good reminder. Going back about 6 years or 5 years, I was a classroom teacher for it was a Pure Life middle school life class, and I did have a homeroom as well. And I had a kid come up to me the first day and in perfect English go, "I'm in your class." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm in your class." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Yeah, I'm from Jordan." And he went on and on. And finally I looked at him and I kind of chuckled and I go, "Oh my goodness, you're a liar." And he stops and he goes, "Liar? I don't know that word." And sure enough, he was in my homeroom class, but he was um he was a newcomer. He was a refugee. But he was not Slife. Even though he was a refugee, he was not Slife. And, it's those assumptions, don't make the assumptions. I had worked with all sorts of students and I still made the assumption. And yeah, it was a little tricky since it was not my Slife class, but rather my homeroom class. But still, I felt terrible calling him a liar. He was the sweetest child. And he told me he learned a lot of his English listening to Elvis Presley. And his English was amazing. No, he did not talk like Elvis, thank goodness, but he was a great kid. Okay. Okay. So, why is it important to differentiate the EL versus SLIFE? And it goes back to that missed education. Okay. So we've got teachers of students who are SLIFE they must be able to be culturally responsive. Okay. And then they must have empathy. Just like you guys were saying, they have trauma. They have they don't feel like they fit into that community. So we have to provide that support for those life students rather than our ESL students, which may have been born in the United States, and even gone to school in the United States, just need that simple language support. So if you don't have any questions on just the basics of like the SLIFE versus refugee versus all those different terms, then we'll go ahead and move on to what Carol, how she welcomes new kids and how we welcome new kids, which is, to me, fun. It's one of the most fun parts is getting to see new kids and and getting to know them. So, okay, right now, think about your classroom and what are some things that you already do to welcome new students, whether it's ESL, whether it's just a new student from another school, wherever. Okay. If you want to use the sentence stem down below, feel free. If you don't. Please put them in the chat because, again, I want to see what you guys do and maybe steal some of those ideas. Okay. So I'm going to give you about a minute and a half to think about it, write it down in the chat. Okay. Also, real quick, if you haven't signed in, the link is in the chat as well. We've got lots of good responses already. If you haven't responded and you're having trouble thinking, you might want to look through the chat and say, oh, yeah, I do that. Okay. Just trying to think back. I know some of us are on summer mode and our brains are, at least mine is a little slow during summer. So, um, so it might help you think of some things. You guys are amazing. Yes. So lots of buddy pairs, which is perfect. Making sure they feel comfortable and they know who they can go to for help. Love it. Um, I'm trying to remember who said it, but they said put a pin in the map. I'm going to show you the version that we used at my school last year, which is very similar in just a minute. And then Janie, oh my goodness, I love the fact that I don't think we even have the option in my district, um, to have kids come in before or after school, before the school year to give them a tour. But that's priceless. That's amazing. Greet them at the door, yes. Recorded my students saying their name. Smart. Love it. Perfect. Kindergarten. You're a saint. Kindergarten teachers. I don't know how you do it. All right, so I'm gonna show you some things that again, I worked at in the Kansas City Public Schools, the Global Academy. So we were a school of this year it was from third through sixth grade. Um, Only SLIFE students and newcomers, and there were very few newcomers, especially towards the end. It was pretty much 90+% SLIFE students, and so these are just some things that at our school we found helpful, yeah, and fun, I guess. Um, well, so Carol says smile when you're meeting the student, introduce yourself, and then the teacher would introduce to the class to not put the student on the spot. I think that's kind of normal. So, well, there we go. So this was one of our boards at the front of our school that everyone is welcome here, everyone belongs. And the pictures, if you look closely inside the flowers, those are pictures of students and then our nurses on there as well. But it was just so that they could see themselves or people that looked like them as soon as they walked in the school. Um, the first picture is a look down the hall. So we've got all the flags. There's a mural that you can see a little bit on the right side of the picture, and it was a mural of Kansas City and a bunch of students playing outside, like recess. And on their clothes were flags as well. So again, they saw their flags. They always got so excited and they'd point and they'd rush to tell their friend, "There's my flag." They they loved it. And then the picture right in the middle, this was our version of the pin. So we had a big map and we taped the string, and then each kid filled out a little person. So they got to decorate their clothing however they wanted. And on it, it said, "My name is, I speak," or no, "I am from, and I speak." And then there might have been another line if they wanted to add something else about themselves. I don't remember. But we made those so that it was less stress for them because some kids kind of get stressed when they're not good drawers. Okay. So we loved our map. The other two are just kind of simple posters from one of the teachers' rooms. The top one, the "Where in the world are we from?" And so every time before a student would start, she'd add or she'd make sure their country was on it. And then she'd always add the birth date of that person before they even walked in the room. She didn't want to forget it, first of all, but she also wanted to know that they were now a part of the classroom. So different ways. Also, you guys were talking about morning meetings, which definitely super valuable. One of the teachers at our school every single morning did just kind of a special morning meeting. So I'm going to show you real quick. Oh, that is not what I wanted. See if I can get to it. Okay, so this was her first, well, maybe not first slide, but one of her slides. And so they'd go through, and each student would say it. So she had an Arabic student that would say "Salam alaikum," and then her Burmese student would say "Minglabar," and as after a few days, the whole class would start saying it. So all of the students in her class knew how to say hello in all the languages in her classroom. Okay. Uh, and so if they needed to, again, like the kids would say it out loud, but She also had like just YouTube quick videos on how to say hello in those countries, in those languages, excuse me. So this is also linked on the Wakelet if anyone is interested. Again, it was just fun. I loved walking by her classroom in the morning and just hearing the different languages. And the kids got so excited. They got to share part of themselves and then their friends learned it as well. So it was a great community building exercise. Let me see if I can get back to my slideshow now. Here we go. Okay. Um, so a few of the other things that we did and a few of the things that Carol shared was desks in cooperative groupings. Um, our kids work together great, and you want them to work together great. I don't know the last time I've seen an ESL classroom in, the normal lines, like where the desks are in lines. Um, Cooperative groupings work out well. And Carol even goes into how she trained her kids on how to arrange them because she was sharing a classroom one year. And so she shares how she created the desk Olympics and how oh yeah, it took a day of instruction, but over the course of the year, it ended up saving her tons of time. So if you're interested in that, that's on page 26. Now, you guys said a lot of these, but just reiterating colorful posters, visuals, labels, label common objects. Also shared writings, posting those so that they can see those. Environmental print, um, student work. We had student work just plastered everywhere. And then objectives for the current lesson. Not in objective words, but in student-friendly words. But so that they know what's going on that day. Okay. Let's see. So the first day. So this is ripped out of the post over here. Was ripped off of one of the schools that I used to work at, off their, not their web page, but Instagram or Facebook. But they had Titan ambassadors. Titan was the mascot, sorry. But they had ambassadors and the kids would apply. And we would encourage some in particular to apply. So if they spoke certain languages, and we had people, we would say, hey, you should apply. But they would give tours to the new students. Like before the students started, that morning, they would give a tour and the building was huge. And so everyone was terrified and it helped. It was a way to show leadership and help the kids figure things out and feel more comfortable. So just a few of the other things that we had talked about was having handouts ready, especially when they start mid-year or middle of the year, just having those, uniform policy if you have one, or just different policies, expectations for the students. A map of the school, if it makes sense. I've seen maps where it's like, your school is 3 floors. That's not going to make sense to younger students. But again, giving them that tour, that will help. Okay. A social contract. Carol is very keen on the social contract. We will go over that next week in part 2. That is definitely an area where I struggle, but we'll go over that next week. Classroom jobs and then making students feel welcome. And those classroom jobs just make everyone feel like they belong and have a role in the class. Let me see. Before we get to that, so I'm going to share the other thing that I did, and I thought I had added it to this, but I guess I hadn't. Maybe it'll show up later and we'll skip over it. But one thing that another thing she's really keen on is a Kahoot. She loves Kahoot. She's a Kahoot ambassador. But doing a Kahoot with questions about the teacher so that the students can get to know you. Now, I don't know about you, but my students never had computers their first days. So I had to adjust mine. And so we would do a PowerPoint and then the kids would either have a whiteboard or they'd get Post-it notes, something. And I would make them either yes, no. excuse me, yes, no questions, true or false questions, or I'd have options that were labeled, picture and word. And so I'd say, okay, I know you don't know me, but we're going to have a fun thing. How many kids does Miss Hoffman have? And they had to guess, if did I have 5 kids or did I have 2 kids or 0 kids? And they just wrote down a number. And so then we'd go through the answers. And along with that, I would show pictures of my children or, what's your favorite food? I'd show a picture of the food. But again, that way they were able to make more connections. And then after they were done with my Kahoot, I'd flip it. And the kids would then have to write 5 questions about themselves. Um, and again, they'd have to make sure they were, either true or false or give the answer. And they could be simple. How many brothers do I have? What languages do I speak? And then I would compile them all. And then I would make a Kahoot out of those. And when we did get the computers, they got to play Kahoots with those questions. And they loved that because they knew their answers. And sometimes they would know an answer for someone else, but they didn't know all of them. And it got them to know each other and they could, ask clarifying, well, some of them could ask clarifying questions or they'd go up to that person after class and be like, you have 10 brothers? What? So we really loved the Kahoot or PowerPoint games in our class. So um, let's, okay. So if you have any questions about first days versus, Desk Olympics. Yeah, I haven't tried that one yet because again, I've already, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but in the chat section was the Desk Olympics, a comment about it. I haven't done that because well, not always, but I generally have my own classroom. And so I can just arrange the desks how I want. And so we haven't had a need for it, but definitely if you have to share a classroom or if there's expectations on how you have to have your classroom set up and you want to use cooperative groupings, definitely take a look at the Desk Olympics. Okay. And there's a QR code to it. So it's a good one. But if there's no other questions on first day or other comments of again, you already put a lot of things that you guys did, which were awesome. But if there's another one standing out that you're like, oh, everyone should know about this, go ahead and put it in the chat. But soon we're going to go ahead and move on to back to the book and Carol. Okay, so culturally and linguistically sustaining practices. I had never heard of this acronym, CLSP. I don't know if it's just because of where I taught and we didn't use it or, oh, also just real quick, yes, a copy of the chat will be included in the Wakelet. So if you need anything, but culturally and linguistically sustaining practices, that makes more sense to me spelled out than CLSP. I had no idea. So we're going to talk about what they are first, and then we'll go from there. So they're intentional approaches to instruction that focus on the student's assets, okay? And then targeting those connections. So pretty basic. So we know our kids have assets, so we're going to make sure we're targeting those to make sure that they understand what's going on, they feel involved, and they can be successful. Okay? So if you have your book on page 27, find it real quick. Page 27, it talks about the CLSP. Okay. I don't want to take too much time reading. And I'm not going to make you write a summary in the chat, but if you could just look through it real quick and come up with just a real quick summary in your brain of why they're important. Okay. Because we're going to be talking about those and how to include them in our instruction. Okay. So it's on page 27. There's a section header, and it's just all under that. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 paragraphs. I'm going to give you a minute. Christine, no worries. Oh, page 27, the section header is what are culturally and linguistic sustaining practices and why are they necessary when teaching life? Your book doesn't have a 27. Oh my goodness. Are we in the second edition? Either way, no worries. Okay, so students feel more comfortable to practice. Yes. When CLSD is practiced. Yes. Okay, so since I'm not sure that you all have the same book as me, I'm assuming that must be the first edition. I don't know. But let's go through it real quick. Since, well, let's just move on and it'll become clear. I don't want to read from the book to you guys. You guys are good readers. Okay, so including CLSP in our instruction, ways to do that and to just, again, help the students feel more comfortable is by sharing your own heritage with your class and then honoring their heritage in thematic units, if possible. Obviously, it's going to be easier in some subjects rather than in others. Okay, learning about the other cultures and traditions, building relationships with them, with those communities. That one's always a good one. Lots of times, and I'm not saying you have to do this, but there's a lot of time churches that have programs that you can reach out to and work with. Just one moment. Okay. Communicating with families, especially in their languages if possible. And then the last one, learning a few words in your student's language if possible, again. And even just that hello, like we did earlier, was is super helpful for connecting with those students culturally. Definitely. So, so these were Carol's tips for the first days on, again, but this is with that CLSP tie-in, okay? This was on page, I can't read it because I've got too many things up on my computer, but 31 and 32. But name tense, I don't remember why she stressed with regular paper, maybe just so that they weren't clunky. And so you could put them in a notebook and reuse them. The Kahoot quiz game, the class selfie. So that's more like then they ask the questions about themselves. The instead of I don't know poster, which is, I've used something like it before and it's always works real well, especially in classrooms that have not just ESL, but the gen ed. It's great for all of them. And then the number 5, which is that social contract that we'll go into next week. Okay. This chapter has a lot of information. So on pages 35 through 39, she talks about placement tests. Placement tests are a nightmare, I find, unless done well. And that's very hard in in any kind of district. But I know in our district, we had one for, we didn't know if they were going to be SLIFE, if they were newcomer, what level. Because most of our kids would come in and be silent because they were scared. And so the placement tests gave us a place to start. And then the refugee focused intake, that we knew our refugees because we had good tie-ins um, with our refugee programs. I'm trying to, like Della Lamb and JVC. So most of the time we knew our refugees, but again, on those pages, she has really good forms to take a look at to help you think about those if you need that. Um, WIDA screener is a good one. Dang it. Um, well, if you don't have the second edition, again, it's not the end of the world, but you might want to see if you can get that book. Maybe your admin can get you a book. I don't know. Um, Luckily, we went to my school. It's a very small school. We went to Carol's PD, and so we were all part of that PD that we were given the book. Um, but I'm trying to think if there's a QR code on that one that I could possibly post. No, I don't. But she's got form in there. But if there are certain things that you don't have in your book that you would like me to post like her links to, if she has a link to it, please just let me know and I can do that after we're done. But, yeah. Okay. Let me go back real quick. And this comes up later in the book as well. So with those forms, um, the one thing to keep in mind, or what the forms and assessments, is that once those kids are in your class and once they feel comfortable, if you notice that they are way higher than their placement tests scored them, is to be able to have that open line of communication with whoever does your placement. And in elementary, it's, maybe it's not the same. Again, I have a lot of middle school background. But if you have different classrooms based off of levels, if they need to be moved to a different class for math or whatever because of their level, it's making sure that you have communication with those people so that it can happen. Because again, when students first get there, they're scared. So they, I know this sounds weird, or silly, but they forget to add and multiply and they just write numbers down. They make a lot of mistakes. So if a month later, they're in your class and they're bored because they know how to do everything, well, then it's at that point your job to reach out to whoever you need to reach out to see if you can, get them moved to where they need to be. If it's they're going to be staying in your classroom, well, maybe move to a different group so that they're more comfortable with that one as well. Yeah. Okay. Okay. This is one of her quotes. It says, pausing education and even stopping it isn't a period, it's a comma in a beautiful story yet to be written. So, um, I thought that was beautiful and something that made me stop and think for a minute because as we're getting towards the end of part one, we're kind of flying through all this information, but that one made me stop and think. Okay. So pausing education, our kids either don't have it, haven't come with a formal education, or it's, you know, they've had chunks missing, but it doesn't, it's a pause, it's a comma. Um, they're still writing their story and we're just there to help. Okay. So we need to make sure we're looking for the skills that they do have and building upon those so that it builds upon their confidence. And to help them see that they do belong with us. They do belong at the school and in our classrooms and help them feel celebrated for their differences, for what they can do, all of it. Okay. So when it comes to celebrating those things, I thought this was really cool. Of course, I can't remember the page number on it either, but it's in part one. But it was you know, these are our life students. They worked in agriculture. Okay, so sometimes we're like, oh, they don't have any education. But They do know a lot about agriculture. They know they have a lot of physical strength from all the things that they had to work on. They have an understanding of timing, of teamwork, of consistency, um, long range outcomes. Um, a lot of students that I've had in the past, they stayed home with parents to help, girls in particular. So if they know how to cook and clean, well, where are their strengths? Well, hospitality, caring for others, organization, preparation, planning, and creativity. So I thought this was just a really good graphic to point out some of those possible strengths that we could help build on for our new students, even if they've never been to school. Okay. So if you don't have the book, maybe screenshot that one. I'm not sure, but if you can, I just thought it was really interesting. Okay, we're almost done. So if there's something else important that I missed, because we all know that happens, if there was a quote to point out, if you have a question, um, please, oh yeah, you have access to the slides. Sorry, I keep forgetting that. But please ask it now, either in chat or out loud. Um, and we got one more thing that I'm going to do. But if you have a question or comment or something you thought was important, please put it somewhere or say it out loud. Okay. The last thing, this is, well, one of the last slides, but last thing I want you to do is think about what we discussed today. What was one thing that stood out to you or something you're most excited about learning in the book? So write either that one phrase or one word in the chat. Okay. After that, we're done. Okay. Next week, we're going to be talking about part 2 and part 3. And then I also have a slide with my email and all that. So if you need that, again, it'll be posted on that Wakelet in the PowerPoint or the slides. But right now, if you'll just do this one thing, write the one word or phrase in the chat that you're most excited for or that stood out to you today. After that, you can go and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Say, it looks kind of nice outside. I can't tell. Thank you all.